appears our event has not properly, perhaps. Okay, no, it did. All right, there we go. Let me see here. See what I can do. I'm checking this on my phone, guys. If anybody wants to tune in, I'm using some new software that I used last time, and really just working to get things in line there. Yeah, you can hear there's a little bit of a lag. So I just want to be able to see who's in, if anybody's going to comment on here, and what's going on. Hey everybody, it's Monday night. Thought I would pop on here. Just finished a workout, and thought I would do a little bit of a quick live, talk to people, and see if anybody's out there. I'm looking over on my second screen here. If you see me looking away, I'm still working out the kinks of my whole setup. But we're getting better. We're getting better. So as y'all know, I live streamed last week, and I'm back. I'm back for a little bit more. And something that I thought I would kind of talk about tonight is there's a lot of it came to my attention. There's a lot of people out there that don't actually know my story or know a lot about me. And so I thought I would try to do a quick, maybe 15 minutes, something like that, little synopsis and sort of how I've came to the point that I am, and really just share some of the basic stuff that I learned along the way. So anyways, my name's Kalen Compass. That's actually not my given name. I actually changed my name legally in 2020 after thinking heavily on it. That was a big decision. So before I go into that, really, let me back up and talk a little bit about where I came from, why it matters, who I am, and how that can maybe provide value to you or why it's pertinent at all. So I grew up in Arkansas, in a decent-sized town for Arkansas, Conway, Arkansas to be exact. And I was homeschooled. I entered public schools in the 7th grade. That had a big impact on my life. And I tell people, because I've also got 6 brothers and sisters, 2 brothers. I'm the second oldest, 1 older brother, and 4 younger sisters. And they're all wonderful, and it's fantastic. And I grew up in a really cool family, actually, looking back on it. You're a kid, you never understand these things quite so well. And you don't value them to the degree that you could, or maybe you should, or something like that. And so I had all these cool experiences. And it's actually come to light, all the things that I learned as a kid recently, as I just moved over here to Idaho. And I realized that I learned all these micro skills that people talk about skills these days. And a lot of people have skills, and they don't recognize the skills that they have. So my family owned multiple businesses. And so my grandfather was a pharmacist, and he owned multiple pharmacies. And then my grandmother got into real estate, and then she started a mobile home company, and then a real estate development company. And then they also had like a side construction business, and pest control business, and a car sales business. So I've been around entrepreneurship and business pretty much my whole life. We built our house. I was a kid, obviously. Didn't really take part other than messing things up, probably. But I got to see these cool things as a kid. I got to see people doing stuff from an outside perspective compared to how a lot of Americans grow up, especially in big cities where they don't have these opportunities. We cleared tracts of land. Like I was operating a bulldozer at like 6 years old, man. It was wild. And so I got to have these really cool experiences growing up. But I also learned a lot of other things. So, of course, on my mother's side, my grandfather started a church. And so that was really religious and super conservative. And it was, I think there's actually a girl that talks about it now that says she grew up in a cult. And maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't know. I don't really know her. Haven't listened to the story, haven't commented on it. But I grew up with these conflicting values that really led me on a circuitous journey through life. And so it was pretty fun because as a kid, I learned to read a lot, and I learned to be an autodidact, actually. Like from a very young age, I learned how to teach myself things. And I think that's one of the real values of being homeschooled. I was always curious, and where schools sort of beat that curiosity out of you, I didn't have it beaten out of me. I was always building things. I was always imagining things. And, like to this day, I've written multiple books, and yet I tell people, I'm like, I struggle with grammar. I'm not always certain where to put a comma, certainly not a semicolon, because I just didn't learn grammar that well. But I've read thousands of books. And so I just kind of do it by knowing how to do it. And so I learned things differently than a lot of people have through life. And don't worry, I'm coming back to the name change. I'm coming back to all this stuff. But this is all highly pertinent, especially from a young age, on what you take out of life and the meaning that you give life. And I saw when people talk about their family being legitimately crazy, my family actually is legitimately crazy on my dad's side. I have two aunts. Both of them, I don't think they've worked a job in like 25, 30 years. Basically, they've been supported by my grandparents, who my grandfather became a millionaire at like 30. And it's really a sad deal. I got to see firsthand what happens to people when they don't have to work for things. They don't have to earn their value. They're just kind of given it. And they're miserable. They're miserable because of it. And so they didn't really learn how to be themselves in life. They didn't learn a solid foundation. And that's the core of my work currently, is helping other people with principles and fundamentals and building a foundation that they can prosper from. And that's important because I saw these things firsthand. I saw what happens, and I lived through it in my life. What really happens firsthand if you don't have a proper foundation, if you don't understand how to say no, if you don't understand how to control your impulses, if you don't learn impulse control, if you don't learn how to think better, how to do better, how to manage yourself. And so these things are really dear to my heart. And I should just back up. When I say my family on my dad's side is crazy, it's like, I don't think my grandfather's worked since his 50s at some point, and he's in his mid 80s. And he's basically, to my knowledge, been on prescription drugs ever since then. And look, they're prescribed, so nothing illegal going on there. But 30 years of whatever, Oxycontin, Darvocets, whatever it is, that's going to mess with you, man. It's going to mess with you. I don't care who you are. And same thing goes for my aunt. And they would tell you a different story. They would say that they got Lyme disease. They would say some of these things. And I know we all have those crazy family members. I've legitimately, both of my aunts when I was a kid have tried to run me over in vehicles. And and my older brother and friends, I remember other friends were there for one of them, others weren't. And so that's that kind of family. And so I got to see firsthand really what happens to people when they don't develop themselves. And I didn't develop myself for a long time. So I'm not speaking from some pedestal of perfection. And I'll get into that because I went on to be a male dancer, and like I fucked around a lot, guys. I did some really cool stuff too. Like in most guys, even to this day, they'll say things in jest about, oh yeah, you were like a male dancer or whatever. And then they'll go on to ask me how they can do better with girls, or how they can build rapport faster, or how they can do these things. And I'm like, dude, you're still out there chasing tail. And I've lived it. Like, dude, I lived the life of a rock star. Like, I had girls just coming and begging for me to just come fuck them after work or like during work or before work or all of these things. So imagine you get total celebrity at 23, 24 years old overnight. And also with a sense of absolute irresponsibility. You don't have to take responsibility. Like, people will buy you your groceries. They will take care of you. They will cook for you. They will do all of these things for you. And so that creates a real nightmare. That also creates this almost addiction to adoration when you're so young and you're thrust into this and you're not certain how to handle it. And so I've had a weird sort of circuitous path. But I want this live. I'm going to have it stay out there for forever because I want people to know a little bit more about me. I want them to know where I'm coming from and why what I say has value and how I've applied it to my life and how these things have really stacked up. So entered public schools, 7th grade. I was awkward, bro. Awkward. And didn't really know how to handle things. And I was so insecure, so like hopelessly insecure. And I was just looking to everyone for validation. And I always looked to women for validation a lot more. My dad was in and out of the house my entire childhood. And I could go into the principles between him and my mom and what, I took away from that. But a lot of that could be summarized into not really understanding how to live within integrity with yourself and just understanding and saying, hey, look, like this is who I am, and having a degree of self-acceptance, and then saying, maybe I shouldn't should all over myself, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to be who I am. It's okay to be these things. And so there's this sort of religious cycle of guilt or shame that I see a lot that happens where guy leaves or guy cheats or a woman, whatever it may be, messes up, comes back, has to go through a period of apology, a period of acceptance, works back into the good graces, repeat cycle. And that's the cycle that I grew up in. And so I just had this broken pattern that I repeated through much of my adulthood up until the last 5 years. And so I'm kind of, maybe I should have ironed this out with some bullet points beforehand, but hey, screw it. Freestyle it, right? So anyways, awkward in the 7th grade and looking for all this validation, especially from females. That seemed like where my dad was always looking for validation as well. And so, of course, kids model. Like, kids don't listen to what their parents say near as much as they model their behavior. And I was always wanting my dad's approval way more. So, of course, I modeled his behavior way more. And my older brother, he was way closer to my mom. And so he modeled a lot of that way more. And so it's fascinating to see how these things develop. And so that started that cycle. Anyways, played sports through high school, ended up playing behind Peyton Hill as he went on to play in the NFL. Was going to take over his position, didn't take over at coaches. This one same coach followed me all the way up from 7th grade, and he was just horrible. And first game of the year was starting running back, like just put up crazy records, guys. I mean, y'all see how physical I am now. Like, I would just put up crazy records. And they didn't even play me. They played me on the kickoff return. So I played 13 seconds that game. And I went in. I quit the next day. I was like, dude, I know when to quit. And I'm not sticking around for people to screw me for another year. So I quit and I moved out to Greenbrier, much smaller school. I think our graduating class was like roughly 150. And that was the best experience I've ever had. It pulled me out of my comfort zone. It forced me to humble myself a lot, to grow a lot, and develop new friendships, and to really question who I was and what I was doing. And it gave me this almost point to start over. And so I got to go out there, and I wasn't allowed to play football, actually. So I practiced the whole season, but that 13 seconds, the Conway coaching team fought it the whole time. And so they fought to keep me out of playing because they were pissed off about it, I guess. And that's kind of how Conway is. Like, they're a bunch of small town petty people, and they want to play small games, and they want to feel important because they do that. And you know what? They felt significant by doing that to a 15, 16-year-old kid. So, kudos to you guys. But so that was kind of that story. But it also brought back my love of reading. So in Conway, I was all about trying to fit in, and that's what teenagers do. Like, you go through that period, and it's like you have all this stuff, and then all you want to do is fit in. And then later you change, and you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to fit in as much. And so when I moved, they had a reading requirement out at Greenbrier, and so I started reading again. And so I was either the top or the second reader every time. In the school. And so I just read voraciously and started playing chess and really got into the things that I love, because as much as I have this physicality to me, I'm oftentimes a little on the cerebral side. So I stay in my head quite a bit, and I like to think through things, and I like challenges, and I really like trying to figure out how the world works. And so that sort of reignited my love of books and learning, and formed some new friendships, and that was awesome. So then I go to college, and I have no idea what I want to do. Actually, that's not true. So I moved to Destin, Florida with my best friend, Zach, and he actually also moved from Conway to Mayflower, another small town, opposite direction, small school again. And we sort of became best friends through that, even though we had known each other since the 7th grade, and we were friends, but we weren't like that close. And so we moved down to Destin, Florida for a summer, and that was awesome for 18-year-olds to do. And so we got to have tons of fun. We were out on the beach, we were up late, we were just, wild stuff. And of course, senior year, drove down to Dallas to this place called Copycats IDs at the time. And, this was before Google Maps. And so we printed off MapQuest. Come to find out, location had moved, wrong location. We're in Dallas. It's huge. And we're trying to find this place. We end up finding it somehow. God knows how. And we find it, and we get us some fake IDs. So now we're 21 at 18. We're down in Florida. We're just partying it up, and, able to buy alcohol and whatnot. And, you're young and dumb. So that was cool. That was a really cool, sort of unique thing that I did. Entered college, and no idea what I wanted to do. My uncle by marriage had started an oil company, so I started working on oil rigs, actually. And I was always doing odd jobs the whole time, because even through high school, I was like doing odd jobs, and I cleaned parking lots at night for my grandfather's businesses, and worked on my grandmother's stuff. So I was always working, always very entrepreneurial. Actually started a fireworks stand that summer. We were down in Florida, came back for 3 weeks, ran a fireworks stand for the 4th of July, and got my first chance of sort of tasting that entrepreneurship. And then went back down to Florida, finished that out, came back, college. And then I was going to drop out. So I was going to drop out of college. No idea what I wanted to do, but my whole family was like, and in the family that I grew up in, it was like, oh, you're going to college, dude. You're going to college. Like, you need to finish this. And if you don't finish it, you're a deadbeat. And by the way, if you don't get a degree in an appropriately accepted field, you're also going to be a deadbeat. And so that's what I did. Went to my doctor and, got diagnosed as ADHD. I'd been put on Ritalin for a little bit as a kid. Come to find out, it was probably just from being fed an inappropriate diet. I find it happens now. If I don't watch my diet, man, I just go kind of wild. But if I have my diet dialed in, I can sit down and study for like 15 hours straight. And started working on oil rigs, did that, started Adderall, bought some motorcycles, started racing motorcycles. Uh-oh, sorry guys. That's my cue to get ready for bed. And started racing motorcycles, and had some buddies that were going through the accounting program. So I just started taking courses with them. Ended up getting a degree in accounting. Big mistake. I don't know if y'all can tell. I'm not an accountant. So went back to school for another year. Everybody on my mom's side is like scientists, engineers, that sort of thing. And so I went back for physics for a year, and I was like, yeah, this is cool, but I can do this whenever. Like I can come back at 30 or 40. This stuff is not going to escape me. I'm a professional learner. And so I was like, I need to do something different. I need to figure out who I am, what the world's about. So I moved down to Round Rock with my dad, right outside of Austin, and got into the indie acting scene. Didn't like it. Was like, nope, not for me. And all these people kept asking me if I worked at this place called Le Bear. And I see we got Debbie Williams Winsky on here. What's up, Debbie? What's up, Kathy? And so I started working at this place called Le Bear, strip club in Dallas, Texas, world famous strip club. And so ended up living in my car for a few weeks, made the move up there, got in a big fight with my dad. And so I was like, dude, like, screw you. Like, whatever, I'm doing this. Primarily because I just had such a good experience when I went there and I worked, and it was like this weird thing. I'd never had any guy friends. All the guys were like, dude, what's up? Like, you're our brother. And then of course the women were super nice. Had a great time. I'd been down in Austin, hadn't been laid in like 8 months, and didn't make a single friend down there. Not a single friend. Like I hated Austin. I was like, for years after that, I was like, dude, screw that place. Like I try to meet people, try to do stuff, and everybody was just like, oh, you don't smoke weed? Nope, not for not for me. Oh, you want to make money? Like, oh, you're a driven person. You have aspirations. Well, it turns out, yes, I do. Yes, I want to go places. So moved up to Dallas. That was pretty rough. Crashed on people's couches, crashed in places. Finally ended up kind of getting on my feet. Lived with a DJ for a while. That was fun, and had just a series of wonderful, wonderful things in a certain sense. And, you'll see people out on social media and they'll be like, bro, in your 20s, just grind, grind, grind. And like, maybe that's the case. Maybe I'd be way further along, but I can tell you, I also saw so many people, and I know so many people now in their 40s and 50s, and they did the grind, and now they're looking back and they're like, dude, like what was that like? What does it feel like to have these things, And because they never scratched that itch, they don't know. And they're always in this state of FOMO, and they're always in this state of wondering what it's like. And so I actually got to explore in life a lot. And it's not like, oh, you were just a dancer and like that's just all you did. Like, dude, I did a lot of stuff. I did romance novel cover modeling. I actually wrote some romance novel books. I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about psychology. And you do as a dancer. Like, you're basically self-employed, and you basically learn hand-to-hand combat, sales, relationship tactics, managing relationships. And you learn a lot of the stuff that people won't reveal in a normal setting. They won't reveal it in a normal setting. But in a setting like the club, they will. They'll talk about things. And so you'll get all this information that people would never divulge in a normal circumstance, and they will. And so I got like a master class in psychology and sort of the different aspects of human nature that I think a very, very small percentage of people ever get. And so that was awesome. That was wonderful. So I did that for roughly 6 years, and learned a lot, man. Learned a lot. Was always like starting different businesses in there. If you know me, I've just always been entrepreneurial. So I'm always up to something. I'm always doing this or that, and was like big into the startup scene for a while, and was like working on some projects there. Nothing that came to fruition, but it was fun, and I got to learn, whereas I saw my other buddies, they started families, especially the people I graduated with, like they were pregnant within a year after graduating high school. And, so I got this totally different experience in life, and that led me to starting a business with my father. We were going to start a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber business, and we were doing off-label treatments. And that reminded me all the reasons of why I left Arkansas in the first place. Why I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder I don't have a foundation for success. No wonder I've taken the routes that I have in life. And I'm not saying that those choices weren't up to me. They were. And by all means, I've lived a very different life than all of my brothers and sisters. And we're all pretty unique in the first place. We're all pretty unique. But I just lived a different life, and I made different choices. And, you know, that was a lot of from what I took away on these things. And so that didn't go well at all. My actually took a trip to Europe with my best friend, and for his 30th birthday party, came back, and we were going to start this business on property that my grandmother owned. It made sense. It actually was a win-win for everybody. We were going to have lower rent. We were going to be able to renovate the building and start up there without having the cost of a 5-year lease and some of the other stuff, and especially some of the city regs that you had to deal with. And came back, and my grandfather had filed for divorce for the second time. So everything kind of went up in limbo and slowly crumbled around me. At the same time, my aunt was like spending money like crazy out of a draw account, and basically all the funds that had been set aside for this business on my dad's side just evaporated, and it just went to hell in a handbasket, man, really fast. And during that time, I was still drinking the way that I was at the club. And at the club, it was like, hey, you can drink, you can have a fun time, but dude, you're so active, you're burning it off. So you're never really hammered. You're never really wasted. You could have 20 drinks a night and leave sober almost. Like it was wild. And your lungs filter out like 90% of alcohol. And so because you're dancing, because you're basically doing cardio the whole time that you're drinking, you do that. But I kept drinking that same way. And so I just kind of spiraled out of control. I just reached this point of total unworthiness. I was like, okay, I don't want to go back there. I was done dancing, and I wasn't ready to give up on this. And so I just reached this point of total insecurity, and I questioned my self-worth. I was like, dude, I don't feel like I should even be here taking up room to breathe. And it led me down this journey of personal growth and transformation. And that's what I really went through over the last 6 years. I turned my full attention to that because I was like, if I don't figure this out, I could start another business that grows to $50 million and just burn it all down. Because psychologically, I haven't built the mindset. I haven't built the foundation. And I've absorbed principles from other people that are sort of like the false path, sort of the false way. And I don't have an operating system to get results in life. And so I went deep on that. And that's been my absolute obsession over the last 6 years. And so, that kind of brings us to today. And so last year I actually wrote my book, Fuck Mediocrity, Be Powerful, Be Legendary. And I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. I basically summarize a lot of the most salient or key points that I learned that were pivotal for me in my journey in transformation to, apparently I did not turn that off. Let me turn this off, guys. So I summarized all these things because I read well over 500 books in that time. Just went deep on this, took a bunch of courses, did a bunch of learning, journaled, put stuff into action. I mean, just the whole gambit, just went all in on it. And I went all in on myself. I went all in on being like, dude, like I'm solving this problem because if I don't, it's going to persist until it doesn't. It's going to persist as long as it does. And like, no, like that's not going to work. So, sorry, I'm trying to, with this multi-streaming, I can't see who's on or anything like that. So I was trying to figure this out. So I wanted to write a book for other men, especially, and the principles in here, they're just as good for women, by the way. But I wanted to focus it for men because I was like, dude, this is what I needed. This is the book that I needed at the very start that didn't take me a year in to start getting things, to start putting things together, because that's how it can be. It can take a minute to put these things together when you have to read a bunch of different topics on what you're doing. And so I decided, I was like, dude, if I organize this into the things that I needed as a battle guide, as a manual, into a single comprehensive book, that would be super powerful. And it'd be super powerful because why? It would save guys tons of time rather than, I mean, look, there's no substitute for reading 500 books. You can't do it with one book. I'm sorry. But most people aren't going to read 500 books. Most people aren't going to do that. Most people need a solution today that they can implement, that they can get the transformation, they can get the tools, the tactics to get on that journey and get that foundation that they can come back to over and over and over again, that are timeless, so that they can get the results that they're after in life. And so that's what I wanted to do. And so that's what I did. And so I put all of that into a single comprehensive volume so that I could hand this book to somebody. I wanted, and everybody told me not to write this, by the way. And all these things are mine. I read my own book, and it's funny because I'll write a book and I'll forget what I put in it. And so I'll actually reread my own book and redo this stuff, because knowledge it's not like, oh, hey, I read this book one time and that's it. It's like, no, you're out to get change. If you want your behavior to change, if you want your identity to change, if you want your mindset to change, it's an iterative process. It takes practice. You don't go to the gym once, throw up some weight, and get in shape. You do it every day, and you put it into practice over and over and over again. And so that's what I do. And I do it with my own book, because as much as I know these principles and I understand them, man, we all slip up at times. We all do. We all can fall out of character. We can all fall out of these things. We can all be tempted. We can all regress to something. And so the more that you're able to reinforce that, I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, I like my motivation like I like my showers. I like them every day. Because you do need to be motivated every day. Like, you don't think Michael Jordan got pumped up for one NBA championship and then was like, okay, well, I got pumped up for the first. I guess I'm not going to get pumped up for the other ones. Like, no, that's preposterous. You would never see that. So no, this is an everyday sort of thing, and you have to activate that every day. Coach Burt talks about it. He calls it prey drive. And he talks about people activating their prey drive, and he's copyrighted that, I believe. So shout out to Coach Burt. And that's their motivation. That's their instinct to pursue. And so that's what this book is rather, because it's very hard to read 500 books over again 10 times. But if you can take the most powerful principles from these things and you can say, okay, I've got a solid manual here to get the change that I'm after, then you can very quickly transform your life. And how does that apply to people? Why is this pertinent? Why should you listen to this at all? Well, because oftentimes when people stop sabotaging, stuff just starts going right. Actually, when you stop sabotaging, you're like, oh, wow, I recognize I made 2x income. And then when you start putting principles into place that start getting results, you're like, oh, I 10x'd my income. If you're in an industry where you were paid on performance. And if you're not, if you're somebody who maybe you're a business owner and you're like, okay, well, how is this relevant? It's like, oh, well, actually, if you start putting principles in place and you start acting in alignment and in congruence, then all of a sudden you become a better leader and you can cast a better vision for your company. And all of a sudden, everybody knows where they're going. And when everybody knows where they're going and they can hold this one big vision in their mind, they can move as a single unit. And all of a sudden, you've 10x'd your income. So yeah, that's one way. You know, another way is all of a sudden you start being a better version of yourself. Your relationships improve. It's weird how that happens, isn't it? At least that's been my journey, guys. Like, I start becoming a better person. I listen better. I'm more present. I have more gratitude. I'm I'm more fun to be around. I'm more enjoyable. People want to be around me because they're like, this dude just shows up at a high level. I feel heard. I feel understood. I like being around this guy. He's a high performer. And you start attracting other high performers. And all of a sudden, before you know it, it starts a virtuous cycle upwards. And then you gain momentum. And then rather than doing what most people do, which is virtuous cycle upwards, whoosh, sabotage back to ground one, they start going up, whoosh, back to two, which, hey, that's been the story of my life, guys. Story of my life. So you don't do that as much. And you don't do that when you're acting from first principles, when you're acting from a solid foundation where you can actually get results in life. And so that's a powerful place to be. Hey, what's up, Megan? If I'm guessing, I don't know if this thing has a lag or not, or if people are on or not on or whatever. Who knows? So that's pretty cool. And so that's why it's relevant, because I've got these sort of 8 core tenets now that I talk to people about, and I'm rolling it out. It'll be part of a new program, sort of daily operating system that I work with people with, and it's core, consciousness, condition, character, command, which is mastery. I mean, if you got to be focused on mastery, especially as a man, especially if you want to command wealth and you want to be really at the apogee of your field, you've got to have that. Then capital, you got to take care of your money, man. You got to have connection, you got to take care of those relationships. And then you got to have contribution. You got to have something that fills your soul. And so when you do those things, then your life radically improves. Like, it's just stupid how fast life can improve, how much the quality of your life can improve. Because I don't care how much money you have or the things that you have. We all know somebody who's rich and then they kill themselves. Why do they do that? Well, we could say, oh, they were successful and they had all this stuff. Why'd they do it? Well, it's because they weren't successful, man. Because they didn't solve that other equation. They didn't solve the equation of how to have the quality of life that they're after. And that's what you want. When you start solving those equations, when you start getting to the first principles of how you feel good about yourself when you're by yourself, shout out Tom Bilyeu for that one, then your life gets way better. And when you feel way better about yourself, other people want to be around you, because a lot of people don't feel good about themselves. And when they're around somebody that feels good about themselves and then they make other people feel good about themselves, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I kind of like this guy. I don't know why. There's just something about him. So anyways, guys, that's a little bit about the book. That's a little bit about the things that you can expect in there. And it's just all these collection. And I organize it into 8 pillars. I have a lot of people that have read it. They're like, oh, dude, these are like 8 pillars of power. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. So I organized it into 8 pillars. There's 31 chapters. Each pillar has different breakdowns, and I try to get into the nitty gritty. I don't try to just do things like, oh, raise your standards. And Tony Robbins, hey man, he helped me with that one. Bro, just raise your standards. But I wanted something more specific. I wanted something more specific that people could take in and that would be immediately actionable so that they could get results quickly in their life, and not just have, hey, raise your standards. Hey, here's some standards that you need to raise. And if you do these things immediately, it'll change. And then here's how to change your mindset. And then here's how to forge your world. And then here's some frames and ways to look at the world to make it better. And there's too much in here. It's almost 500 pages. It's really cool. So, yeah, I'm really proud about it. Really proud of it. And so, guys, that's kind of my story. If y'all are just tuning in here at the end, I basically just covered a little brief synopsis over sort of how I grew up, where I came from, where I'm at now, what I'm doing in the world, and in the future, if people watch all the way till the end here, what you can expect from me. You know, you can expect a lot more of the same stuff, and I'm just really out to solve big problems and share the problems that I've had in my life and then help other people solve similar problems. So that's what's up. So hope everybody has a good night. Hope everybody has a good Monday. Let's keep the week going strong and maybe tune in tomorrow. Be good, everyone.